Welcome to the official Cybersecurity Summit. I am your host for this tract, V. Venezuela. For those of you who have not met me, I am the host of the television show Down to Business with V, where we talk about cybersecurity, information security, fraud mitigation, emerging technology, and its impacts on businesses and you, what you're doing every day. I also write a national news column, Info Sector with V. Venezuela, where I write about cybersecurity, information security, fraud mitigation, and emerging technology and its impacts on government, business, civil society, politics, the wider public, and its impacts on you. And I just break down that threat intelligence for the everyday American and for those that are watching and listening abroad as well. Additionally, I am hosting a TV show, Beyond the Brand, where we're talking about how legacy companies are using tech to bring their brands forward into this ever-evolving digital landscape. I'm also the host of Vicker Group LLC. We have a cyber division where we talk about, guess what? Guess what we talk about there? Cybersecurity, information security, fraud mitigation, emerging technology. And I also am a United States Marine. Oorah, devil dogs in the audience. Give them a dog bark. Just go ahead and put it in the chat. And a shout out to all of our service members that are here and watching. We thank you for serving our nation, and we certainly do appreciate you as well. Now, you guys, let's talk a little bit about this track. GenAI, threat intel, and red teaming. That's what we're going to be talking about here today. I am so excited to have our panelists. Listen, you guys, we got to give them a shout out and a round of applause because they are coming to us from overseas. It's the middle of the night in some places. Not quite the middle, but it's late. And so we're so happy to have them with us. And I do want to acknowledge that we are recording this panel in this track for you just because of schedules, mine and others. And so we're excited to have these gentlemen here. They have backgrounds that we're going to be tapping into today to bring you knowledge, wisdom, insight, revelation, understanding that you can take back to your teams. So I'm going to give them the floor to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about who they are, what they do, and how they are saving the world one way at a time. Ofer, let's go with you.
Thank you very much. So very happy to be here. My name is Ophir Dror. I'm one of the co-founders and the CPO of Lasso Security. Lasso Security is a generative AI and agentic security company. We help some of the biggest organizations in the world to adopt GenAI in a safe and secured and smart way. I'm myself in charge of everything related to product, AI, and red teaming in Lasso Security. Been in this industry for over a decade. And been spending most of my recent time trying to defend and attack AI systems and agents. So very excited to be here and looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Ophir. We certainly do appreciate you. And it's late there where you are. So definitely thank you for staying up and sharing your insights with us today. Ziad, tell us a little bit about you, what you're doing, how you're saving the world.
Thank you. Well, I'm part of a team that helps save the world here at Wiz. Ziad, I'm a group technical marketing manager at Wiz. Wiz is the cloud and AI application protection platform. We help organizations, builders and defenders actually protect everything they build and run, whether it's in the cloud, on-prem environments, SaaS, wherever it may be, we're helping them protect it. I am lucky to be surrounded by a team of product managers, builders that help make Wiz a great platform for our customers and organizations. And I also do spend a lot of time with customers talking about AI, building with AI capabilities or defending these AI applications that they're building. And now, on top of that, I'm also a part-time vibe coder when I get the chance to. I love these generative AI tools and spin up websites of all sorts just for fun. I haven't been attacking them or red teaming them yet, but we can talk about that in this panel.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited about it. So we will be talking about agentic generative AI systems. We're going to be talking about dynamic behaviors that challenge traditional security testing approaches. I'm excited about it, you guys. We'll also be looking at structured versus exploratory testing models and how to define adversarial objectives and measurable outcomes. There's a whole lot to be talking about today, and I am ecstatic that we're going to get to jump into this with you both. So let's start with you, Ophir. When we look at some of the traditional red teaming, predictable application behaviors, how do generative or agentic AI systems change the way we look at those attack paths and the adversarial objectives? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think it's a very good question, and I think it's a key thing to understand when we think about whether we should be using our existing tools or whether we should even be testing those applications and what can go wrong. I think the basic understanding that we need to have is these systems are not predictable, they are non-deterministic, and it makes a very big difference in how you first defend them, but also how you attack them. I think most security tools, and for those of us who've been red teaming or pen testing in recent years or since the beginning of this occupation, I think it's always been a very structured process. When you know, software has been deterministic. You know that every time you send it X, Y is going to happen. Every time you send Y, Z is going to happen. And I think now it's becoming pretty evident that we're in a kind of world where you can send X, and then Z happens, and you can send X the second time, and then A happens, and then all of a sudden C and D and E, and no one really knows what happens anymore. So, if traditional red teaming or traditional testing was mostly focused on sequential steps, logic, architecture, how these things actually built and what can go wrong when you do the same actions over and over, we are now stepping into a world where it's more dynamic. Like the attack vector is text, it's the conversation, it's the memory, it's the context. You're not looking for logical flaws anymore. You're looking for emergent behaviors. You're looking for an agent that is doing something that it shouldn't be doing. And I think from attacking and red teaming perspective, that's a big difference. I think the foundation still remains the same. Okay, you're still going to be using the same tool set that we have. You're gonna try and understand how this application is built. You're going to try and understand what it does. You're going to try and understand where the weak spots are. But in terms of attack vectors, I think it really calls to reassess and rethink about what attack vector or what attack path even is, because it's not code anymore. It's text, it's context, memory, tools, whole different world than what we are all used to.
Wow, that's a really good point, Ophir. And to open with that the attack vector has changed. Everything's much more dynamic, and we're not just looking at one thing anymore. We're looking at many things that could be attack vectors. Very interesting. And you said that we're looking at emergent behavior in the light of all of this. Listen, very sobering opening words there, which really sets the bar for the gravity of what we're dealing with in the light of all of this. Ziad, let's hear your thoughts here.
I think Ophir said a lot, right? Generative and agentic systems completely break the model we've known so far, and everything here is on point, right? I think it's also interesting to look at some of the emergent capabilities of these systems, right? When you have a bunch of agents interacting with each other, sometimes these agents, have different tools they have access to. And the chaining of these tools works in ways developers don't even anticipate sometimes, right? So you may add another tool, and all of a sudden, the agent now has dynamic privilege escalation. Let's say maybe it has access to a read-only database. It cannot write, but it also has a code execution tool against that database. And now all of a sudden, it has this emergent capability, which almost gives it write access like privileges. So I think, the ground is shifting under our feet and like developers' feet and the defenders' feet in general. So organizations really need to change the way they look at this. And like Ophir mentioned, the attack vectors have changed, but there are some things that are still stable, right? I think just as we used to do in the cloud native applications only without involving AI, we recommend organizations do a lot of relationship mapping, like understanding the resources that exist, but also how they interact between each other and the relationships that they entertain with each other. I think that this approach can also apply for AI native applications, where it's important to understand how the AI systems actually traverse the models to the data sets, agents to the API endpoints that they expose, the tools to the different cloud or SaaS resources. I think the tool chaining and the data flow is still very important, or even more important in such applications. Now, one change which we discussed earlier, and I think is also equally important, is the threat modeling part. That exercise needs to change, and instead of defining the adversarial objectives around what the application is supposed to do, and that is like very procedural, right? Ophir spoke in terms of sequences here. I think we should still be doing that, but we should also define the adversarial objective around what the actual AI agent can do, the tools, the permissions, the reasoning. And again, there's always this non-deterministic behavior where different actions, or different outputs can be produced based on the same input. So we need to also take that into account.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys, this is very interesting. Before I say what I'm thinking here, you talked about relationship mapping and the threat modeling needs. So what's interesting to me is that as we're having this language or this conversation about the agentic models, these are some of the same conversations I had in financial sector operations about human entities. And so it's just very interesting that we're in an era now where we're having to take that language and apply it to NHIs, non-human entities, these agentic models, and look at their access, the emergent behavior. These are the exact same things I was having to deal with physical human employees within a workspace. So what's interesting though is that as we're talking about these agentic models, the AI models, is that the scope and depth of their competencies and abilities, cognitive abilities, it depends on how you want to look at it, makes them a much greater level threat, which is why we're having these conversations here today. So very, very interesting. And I also want to add too, I know that there are people in our audience that are watching. You guys are at the center of these conversations in your organizations. And sometimes there may be a cap with getting information out. Just keep hammering at it, because what we're discussing here is so hugely important, as you all know who are watching. But I just pray that those silos begin to collapse, and that the information that needs to gets out across the organization. People understand what the threat is now. And as Ophir said, that this threat vector has completely changed. It's everywhere, essentially, and anywhere, as we're dealing with these models. Ziad, I'd like to talk with you about the debate around structured red teaming versus exploratory adversarial testing. Which approach in your experience are you finding more effective in uncovering the real world risks that we're looking at in AI systems?
Well, that's a great question. I would say one does not exclude the other to start with, and each have their pros and cons, but also a certain cost, right? Structured gives you a predictable cost structure. I know how much time I'm going to spend potentially on these tasks, or like these sequences of steps, right? Whereas the exploratory part is sometimes like it's an open world. There are so many tools that we can leverage, and so much time we can potentially spend doing it that we need to take also like the cost into account. In general, I think you need both, but at different layers. The structured part is great at validating some of the known attack patterns at scale. You could use existing frameworks, MITRE, OWASP, top 10, etc. It's also, I guess, helpful, for compliance and audit requirements, making sure that you have like the baseline covered, at least when it comes to misconfigurations, exposed resources, services, AI or not, actually. And it's also great because it's reproducible, right? The structured part, you can run these tests on a periodic basis. But it's never going to be enough, especially in this new AI-based model where some novel risks are showing up, right? Prompt injections, and I know that Lasso has a lot to say about that. So, Ophir, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. But
Yes,
many
absolutely.
novel AI-specific attacks, right? Emerging agent behaviors, also like the multi-tool, multi-hop reasoning. These things can be hardly tested with the structured approach. Also, we need to be, stress testing these AI systems under different adversarial conditions that should also be dynamic. So the structured part really doesn't cater to that. And there's this, again, like going back to Ophir's point, like the unknown unknowns of agentic systems. Like we can't always, predict ahead of time how they're going to behave. So the exploratory part is really going to be important here. Again, it might be more costly, but I think organizations should actually balance both. And I'm sure Ophir will have more to say about this.
Love it. Ophir,
Yeah,
let's hear your
spot
thoughts.
on. Yeah, I 100% agree. They're definitely not exclusive. Strong believer of a tiered approach. I think they serve pretty different purposes. And I 100% agree about the cost. I think it's a great point that a lot of people don't think about. Testing AI systems using other AI systems is expensive. And it's not only expensive in terms of how much money it costs, it's also expensive or can be expensive in terms of how much time does it take. So obviously, structured attacks can be much faster. They're a bit more appropriate if you want to try and do it as part of your CI/CD process, for example. Yeah, like you don't want it to run for 2 hours. And they cover a lot of the basics. They cover what you want. You want to check the box. You want to make sure that everything is working and is safe according to the frameworks that Zayad mentioned. And I think the exploratory is like the extra mile. The exploratory testing is exactly what you would expect if you had a very good team of red teamers or attackers sitting inside your organization. That's where the creativity comes into place. That's where people, like the agents, can have their time poking around, trying to find the weak links inside the chain. Yes, it takes a bit more time. It's a bit more expensive. It's non-reproducible. And I think that's also an important point. Going back to the previous question, we're used to live in a world where both the systems we test are predictable and reproducible, but also the tests we run. Once we start running tests that are unpredictable or non-reproducible, and we make it a bit harder for the defenders to defend because it's a constant whack-a-mole kind of game. You always run something new, you always find something new. But I think that's the reality. From my experience, the structured parts, they check the box. You have to do it. It's not a question anymore. The exploratory part, that's where the customers that we have, that's where you get the aha moment. That's where you find this little thing that you didn't think about when you build this application or when you tested it yourself. That some of the attacks that were created were even kind of scary for us. Like we have a lot of agents finding out new attack vectors and creating a lot of new scenarios that my research team didn't think about. And of course, we're utilizing it and expanding it to other customers. But I think there's also an emergent behavior and compounding effect for using the exploratory testing. The only question you should ask yourself is where it is appropriate to use what.
I love that. Ask where it's appropriate to use what. And you guys, if you see me looking down, that's because I got my notebook here taking notes because lots of great information is coming down as always when we do these panels. But I love that you both mentioned that I'm going to use this quote I heard from a woman years ago, years and years ago. She said, it's not either or, it's and in both. So especially when we're looking at this, you both are saying it's not either or, we need both. It's and both. And I like the concept of, stress testing. And Ziad did mention both at different layers. And Ophir, you're saying the same thing, that there's a tiered approach. And looking at, you both mentioned the cost component. I think, listen, at this point, if you got it to spend, you might as well dunk it in here, especially when you're looking at the exploratory, because Ophir, you mentioned a really good point, is that your agents were able to find things that your human team didn't even think of. That's a whole another level of insight that we're dealing with when we're talking about AI and the potential and possibilities in this particular perspective and component. I find this whole conversation like hugely interesting. And Ophir, while we're talking about this, as you know, AI systems evolve over time through model updates, whether it's memory, new integrations. How should organizations be thinking about continuous AI security validation versus that one-time testing that we're thinking about here?
Yeah, so I think unfortunately here the answer is very similar to how you think about pen testing and red teaming today. If you're only checking the box and you want to do your, I don't know, SOC 2 GDPR, you might want to do it once a year. If you're a responsible and security aware organization, you want to be doing it all the time. And it applies to traditional deterministic systems. And I think it applies much more to agentic systems. The reason being what you just mentioned, those systems, other than the fact that they are non-deterministic to begin with, okay, so we're starting from a baseline that is very confusing and very not clear, and they are changing. They're changing all of the time, whether it's through the model, new data sources, system prompts, ownership and accountability are still not very clear, I think, to a lot of organizations that we are working with. I found a vulnerability. Who needs to fix it? Is it the data scientist? Is it the security team, application security, DevSec? Like who's in charge of that? And I think that adds a bit more of complexity. From our approach, I think the answer is clear. One-time testing is, I think regulation is going to push us all there. You're going to have to do one-time testing. It's something that you cannot not do it. But if you think about long-term posture and security, I think really revalidating it, and I won't say every time something is changing, okay, that might be too much. Not every CI/CD push, not everything that is when someone is doing, but we do find and we do see a lot of new attacks, even when we're doing this recurrency of testing, even if we're doing it once a week, okay, like once a week, every time we test the application, our customers, they find something new, they patch something new. And to me, it says like the risk is still there. Like one time's not going to protect you.
Yeah. What's interesting is that, the panel, the tracks are pre-recorded today, but we had a similar discussion around, how things are continuously changing and then how we respond to that and ensure that we are meeting compliance and, the regulatory frameworks that are in place around these things, as well as implementing some of the best practices and safeguards and ensuring that our organizations and your customers and end users are secure as well. So very, very interesting. All very, very interesting points there. Ziad, let's hear your thoughts on this.
Well, fully agree with what Ophir said so far. I think the one thing I'd add is like continuous pen testing may not be something you want to do right now, but you also need to know what you're actually going to be testing. So what we also recommend is initially continuous discovery. Make sure that as these applications get pre-built, redeployed, improved on, you are aware of any resources, AI related or not, that are actually proliferating inside your environment, right? So we recommend teams at least start with automated discovery, making sure that they're catching new models, agents, data sets, exposed endpoints, and more inside their environment as soon as they're deployed. And then the deep code review or application pen testing that can happen on a let's say less frequent basis when there's like a material code change or when we suspect that, hey, like the attack paths might shift here, right? Because this isolated model now all of a sudden is connected to a production database or something like that. So it's time to reassess and maybe deploy a full-blown penetration test on this application. But yeah, I think it's you have to choose carefully when to actually scan and how to scan, and also prioritize some of the more critical applications for your business today, right? The ones that are customer facing, the ones that are maybe revenue generating, that sit on an important part of your business and your infrastructure. Maybe start with that first, and then expand the scope to other areas of your environment.
Yeah, I love that point. Prioritizing, customer facing, revenue generating, those are going to be huge, 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 huge. And then Ophir, you talked about ownership. We keep coming back to that point as well, the point of ownership and who's going to fix what, who's responsible for what. If there's a breach or like you said, something needs to be fixed, what organization or business unit within that organization is actually responsible for that. And I think that definitely has to be outlined, ahead of time. And, I want to pivot back a little bit because, Ziad, you mentioned something in our opening where you talked about, red teaming. I want to, just jump back a little bit and let's talk a little bit about how you're leveraging AI itself to conduct red teaming, whether, you're simulating traditional attacks and emerging AI orchestrated threats. And what are the new risks that are introduced in this process?
So like at Wiz, we have built this agent, which is an AI powered agent. It acts like an attacker inside your environment, and helps you, well, first of all, surface or monitor your entire exposed attack surface, unknown or undocumented API endpoints, for example, that may be exposed by agents and the workloads they're running on. And then this agent actually reasons about your attack surface and what's exposed, the technologies, the tools, etc., and comes up with a plan to test and, let's say, poke holes inside this API endpoint or application in order to, get a foot in the door, gain initial access, maybe exploit a vulnerability, maybe exploit a misconfiguration in the exposed technology, maybe weak credentials or passwords, things like that. And it will actually chain these different steps and tools that it has in its toolbox until it reaches its goal without being too intrusive or without being harmful inside your environment. The goal is really to show to the defenders that, hey, there's a complete or qualified attack path or like multi-hops through which this AI-powered agent managed to run or to go through, and to show them that their crown jewels, whether that's sensitive data, secrets, compute resources, that may be stolen, are actually within the reach of threat actors. The goal is really to help the defenders prioritize these attack paths and show them that there's actual exploitability potential here, or something that's validated as exploitable that they need to tackle and to remediate. So that's how we deploy AI today in the context of red teaming.
I love that. Absolutely love that. So necessary and so needed. And then, doubling back to Ophir's point, these agentic AI agents are able to detect things that the average human, and not even the average human, because I feel like anybody working in this field, you are above average, okay? You are not the average human being. But even those that are above average, we're not necessarily able to detect things. And Ophir, let's hear your thoughts on red teaming and agentic AI in this process.
Yeah, so from our perspective, I think that the advantages of using AI are huge. Again, the creativity, the determination, and those attacks can go on for hours and hours and be very persistent in what they're trying to achieve, thinking and being very sneaky and creative about where to approach and from where and to where. And I think it gives us as attackers huge benefit, and the reward is amazing if it works, and a bit scary. I think also, to your question, I think it also introduces some complexity, and I think it's important from the attacker side to mention that some things, when you're using AI as an attacker, you also expose yourself to some I would say weaknesses that AI holds in itself, again, a lot of these systems, a lot of the systems out there, they rely on AI to evaluate whether the attack succeeded or not, which can introduce, some complexity. Not everything is very clear. And those AI systems, they tend to have their own thoughts about how to complete the task, and they're being very creative about that as well. I think one of the drawbacks that we mentioned before, the non-determinism of those kind of attacks, it's a new concept. The people we work with, they're used to, reports that they are either reproducible or not reproducible. And when you introduce those kind of attacks, every time you would run the Lasso red teaming agent, 99% you're going to find something new. You're going to find a new vulnerability. And it's a new concept that you need to think about. We have a lot of thoughts about how to remediate it. We also have agents that automatically remediate it because the load, and we talked before that about prioritization. I think prioritization is key today of how to solve this, endless whack-a-mole game. It's not going to be an option tomorrow. There are going to be just so many agents for every organization and every employee. And this whole process is going to need to be autonomous as well. So finding the vulnerabilities, patching them, it's all going to be something that is closed very fast. I think another point that is super, super important to remember here is, you are using AI yourself. The same system that you are using, it needs to be protected. We have very smart customers, and we have some very smart defense mechanisms, honeypots, recursive jailbreaking. You're trying to hack someone, and then your model is being jailbroken. It's relatively an emerging field, but I think honeypots for agents is going to be huge, huge, huge in many fields, not only for us as red teamers. And I would say that maybe the most dangerous thing that you need to think about as an attacker, and again, I'm answering it from the attacker perspective, and I think people who are watching it could really take it to how they think about it from the defender side. But how do you know that the agent is going to stop? For us as humans, when I'm getting a system to break, I want to cause some damage, but I don't want to cause chaos. And those agents, they might cause chaos. People are very hesitant, and for good reason, to let us test their production environment. We do have our ways to stop the agent, but I think when you, as an attacker or as a defender who's buying or building one of those systems, you need to think, do you have the right means and kill switches to stop something that the agent's doing? It's not the friend that sits next to you and you can tell him, listen, that's too much. Yeah, so it's a whole new world. It's very exciting, but it's also very scary, both from the defender and attacker perspective, I think.
Yeah, that one right there, I fear that one caused me pause, because you're right. It's much different than having somebody you can say, hey, okay, got it. We can stop there. We see that there's, potential here. There's exploitable, potential, but you can't stop it. So, wow, that's once you unleash it, it's unleashed.
Yeah, it's funny because it's unpredictable in both ways, right? When you build it and you deploy it, it's non-deterministic, but it's also the same for the red teaming or the AI-driven testing part. So organizations do need very strict boundaries there, what's permitted and what's not. So, they prevent bringing production down, and I understand Lasso's customers here.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lasso and the team over at Lasso would recommend you knowing how to deploy your kill switch, knowing that there is one. Well, first of all, having one, knowing that there is one.
Yeah, it's a good start.
Yeah, because I think it's important to know, as we're discussing here, like that's a whole point of this, is to know that there's a path. Ziad said a complete qualified attack path. That is just that language, a complete qualified attack path. You would want to know that that's there so that you can patch it. Ophir, before we move on, I do want to double click on the fact that you said this whack-a-mole wave that we've been doing things up to this present moment in time will no longer be useful in the future. Everything will need to be automated, including the understanding the pen testing part of that, and then the patch as well. Huge points there. So I'm going to double click on this by saying, organizations that are here listening, take this back to your teams. Have a kill switch. know that there is a kill switch and be ready to execute the kill switch at any given point, because you have to have this pen testing. You got to. Ziad mentioned the crown jewels, that intellectual property, whatever it may be. You've got to be able to protect that, and you can't not protect it out of fear. So have a kill switch, know that it exists, and then know when to execute it for pen testing. I love this conversation. You guys got me sweating over here on this one. All right, red teaming. And listen, Ophir, we're going to start with you on this one. This red teaming process, it will often uncover issues, as we're discussing, that are hard to remediate. How are teams ensuring that, these findings translate into durable mitigations, especially when we're talking about collaboration with red teams, developers, and AI engineers? How are we dealing with this?
So I think, first of all, from my experience, and I think everyone who's been part of red teaming programs or attacker or the defender side, that's where a lot of those red teaming, even like traditional red teaming programs, that's where they fall apart. You run an attack, you get a very nice and shiny report from someone who has a very big logo on some building, and then you're like, okay, now what? Who's fixing it? How now what? Do I have to rebuild the application? Do I have to put some runtime measurements? Do I have to rebuild and rebuy my whole security stack? Like, what's going to happen now? I think the world of agentic AI red teaming is no different. If you are getting a report and then you have to go chase around who's going to fix it, and if the ownership is not consolidated, if it's not the same tool, and again, unbiased here, but I think if it's not the same tool who's doing the red teaming, the offensive side and the defensive side, it's going to be very hard to do it now, and definitely very hard doing it going forward. In Lasso, we have this concept of attack, report, remediate. You can do everything in a very holistic way. And I think we're looking in the future where we have so many agents. We talked about it in the previous question, but you're going to have so many agents that any other process is not going to be scalable. If you're expecting a human somewhere, and again, human in the loop, approving things is okay for now. I don't think it's going to hold forever. But if you're expecting a human to be there and setting up all those different policies to all those different agents in all those different departments and all those different use cases, and you mentioned rightfully, some of them are external facing, some of them are internal facing, some of them are very important, some of them are writing code, and some of them are just answering questions. Like it's too much. So the goal here, I think, is to close the loop between red teaming and runtime security very, very fast. I would say that some of the remediation happens in places that are not related to agentic security in its traditional way. Some of it is more in the infrastructure configuration, architecture, logical flaws. A lot of the things can happen before the agent is being, sent to the wild. And those should be addressed like we address pen testing and red teaming today, very similar. But I expect that I think we have less of those because we know how to build software. We're in a place now where people kind of know how to build software and how to, use best practices. That's not the case for agents who are in the wild. It's not the case for runtime agents. And again, going into the complexity of how to defend, some of the defenses are very straightforward. You don't want your agent to spit out PII, PCI. Okay, that's a data problem. We know how to solve those. Some of them are around safety. Again, data problems, data in, data out. We know how to solve them. Some of them are very contextual. Again, a lot of the issues, the incidents, and the concerns we're seeing from customers is around brand reputation, brand risk. Is my agent going to say something mean about my competitor? Is it going to promise me a $1 car or a flight? Those are very soft security issues, but those are security issues that companies are losing money on today. And definitely when you go down the route of yes, can it execute code? Can it call another tool that can do something malicious? Can it delete the database? And I think very, very down in the bottom of the hard things to solve for agents is the behavioral part, like understanding downstream what is an anomaly. This agent has been behaving very nicely for 99 days, reading my emails. and then on day 100, it decides to delete my mailbox. It's not a data problem. It's not a logical flow. Everything is working as expected. The agent behavior is drifted. And I think it's really important to know that all of those things can be solved, and they need to be solved. Some of them in runtime, and they relate directly to how agents operate. And some of them are configuration and architectural wise. But the loop here is very, very important, and it needs to be fast.
Yeah. Listen, I just keep taking it back to the human component, because you said several things there that, I mean, in business, we've seen humans do. They said something bad about the competitor and it cost the organization money, or a partner, that cost the organization money. Or there it was, this human checking the emails and decided it wanted to delete the whole inbox, just got out of its mind in a sense. But that's when we look at the human threat actors. And now we're having to look at these agentic models that we have built and assess that risk with them as well. It's very, very, like, the whole conversation is very interesting around this. But if it could happen with a human, it could happen with an agentic model in an exponentially more dangerous fashion, because we can't necessarily predict the outcome on this, as you started with, Ophir. Ziad, do you have additional thoughts on this at all?
Well, Ophir's answer was so complete that it's going to be hard to add new insights here. But I will say, like, our approach has been also AI centered when it comes to going from findings to mitigating risk. If AI can actually be used, to augment the pen testing approach and break the application, AI can also probably be used to heal that same application, right? So we think that we need to combine these pen testing findings from AI-powered tools with, like, internal knowledge of the environment. And in order to enrich these findings, right? These findings need a lot of context around them, making sure that every step or action that the AI penetration tester takes is clearly documented and contextualized, understood, in the larger cloud or AI environment that we have, the design decisions, the architecture, identity and access management model, access to sensitive data, network interfacing. I mean, all of this internal context is something that the defenders actually have access to, right? They know their cloud environment. They have tools to gain visibility into their cloud environment. So if they combine this internal knowledge with what the AI penetration tester is telling them, they can probably take this as input for another specialized agent that will be responsible for planning the remediation steps, right? How to break the attack path, how to mitigate various risks within this attack path. And I don't recommend that like it's a full, complete agent-to-agent cycle, because we still need the human in the loop to make sure that these mitigations will properly work and remove the risk from the environment. And we also need people to apply those mitigations, whether they're in the configuration plane or maybe also in code sometimes. We need to go back to the root cause. I like to talk about agent as code, just like we talk about infrastructure as code, because many of these are defined in files that are committed to source control, these declarative languages and files. So we can also go there and fix some of the problems with our AI applications. Also, runtime is equally important. We need to monitor the behavior and maybe make the changes directly there. So we can have this relationship between two specialized agents that challenge each other. One breaks into the application and the other one tries to heal it to make it harder next time for this agent to try and break into the application again. With, of course, like the human involvement where needed, and where the remediation, guidance gets more complex, or where it needs human input, because again, at the end of the day, humans own their applications and the infrastructure that they deployed, so they need to be responsible for it.
Yep, absolutely. At the end of the day, you own it. And listen, there have been discussions around that as well here in the US. If an application or an agentic model does something that causes harm, who's responsible? Is it the organization? Is it the AI? Who's responsible? Well, I think Zia just settled that. You own this AI. You're responsible for it. So you better get a hold of it. You guys, there is so much that I have gained here. Like I said, I've been taking notes as well. One of the big things is make sure you have a kill switch, know that you have one, and execute it as you're doing your pen testing so that you can do it securely with confidence and know that whatever this qualified attack path is that has been exposed can be patched and done so, and you don't have to fear the entire process. You can do it with confidence, knowing that these organizations, these companies are out there, these experts are out there to help you along the way. I love that we both looked at the human in the loop and versus the human not in the loop part of this conversation. And really, I think what happened here, you both truncated where we are in history, in human history, looking at where we are right now as you know, how we do business with these agentic models versus how we will do business with them in the future. So for our audience, I know you've got some notes. Take them back to your organizations, pass this information on, hold a meeting, send out a memo, do what you got to do, tweet, call, write, do something. But take some action on this great information that we received today. Gentlemen, I want to thank you both so much for being here with us. We are out of time. Thank you for sharing your above average intellect, knowledge, and expertise with us. You are absolute geniuses at what you do, and we appreciate you. I also want to thank OWASP for bringing all of this together with our beloved Cyber Risk Alliance and the official Cybersecurity Summit. I always say nobody does it better. Nobody does it better. I'm so excited. And you guys be sure to visit the vendor section because there are more solutions and conversations to be had there and insights to be gained there as well. I am so excited about it. Don't go away. There's more happening here today at this official Cybersecurity Summit. We are so excited. Stay tuned. There's more coming.